So, I don't remember the last day I was on here. I'm going to assume it was Saturday. I can't remember. But, yeah, so, what were we talking about last time? Anyway, looking at going forward for the next couple weeks, theoretically. So, it looks like this week I'm scheduled for I have tomorrow off, and I'm scheduled for the rest of the week to work night shift. I'm hoping that we have fewer people coming in because it's getting disconcerting for these people to keep interacting and potentially spreading whatever they got. But I'm working the rest of the week, and then Sunday through I want to say Wednesday I have off, I think. And with that being the case, I want to try to get some things done. One of the things I've been playing around with is I have some note cards that I could do some things with. I got a bunch of note cards from the stationery section, and they give me the ability to make flashcards and other things to work with. But there's also, I got some material for doing a green screen, and I've got a collection of movies and books that I want to get through and check out, and I want to get back into doing my regular videos on here, as well as, I think that's not right. I think I'm missing a piece on that. Anyway, ADD's all over the place because I can't find the food I need from the store, so it's very high carbohydrate food right now, which my experiments last year indicate is something liable to make me a little bit ADD. Anyway, I'm going to work on some of my regular videos on here, maybe do some editing of the videos over on Roving Jack, and really just see if I can get started, get my feet under me on these projects. And then from there, I'm looking to see if I can set things up to be a little bit better where I could probably do some stuff daily if I continue to work where I'm working, work and then work on projects for the channels afterwards. I need to get back into a pattern of being able to do that. I'm not very good at it right now, but I know it's possible because I've done it before. And so I'd like to do that again. And while I was playing around with some options, one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to do like a video pen pal, because I know in some of the social communities that I'm a member of online, there are some people struggling right now with the isolation. And I feel like being able to do like a social pen pal kind of video series might help a little bit. It's sort of like having a guest in your house once a day. And so I might want to try to do some of that. And while I was thinking about that, I was thinking about whether or not I could do some gameplay. And there are a couple different ways you can do some tabletop gameplay. And one of them actually seems to be a site called Roll20. Has the ability to have a shared tabletop that you can play games on. And then it gives you dice, It gives you the ability to do a deck of cards, gives you the ability to do tokens like poker chips, gives you the ability to do a map or a board. And so at that point, theoretically, most of the games that I would want to play, I think we should be able to put up on a virtual tabletop and allow people to play over the internet. So I may do something like that. But it was also, as I was looking at it, it looks like it's a good possibility. Yeah, I'm inclined to be reclusive. So it doesn't bother me at all to be like, I'm debating, like they have said at work that they understand if people don't want to keep exposing themselves to the public. That's a horrible way to phrase that. Don't want to keep exposing themselves to potential infection from the virus from the public. So if people want to opt out of working for a while, they can. But we supply access and the ability of people to get things they need. And I don't really want to walk away from that yet. But I am getting to the point where like I don't want to keep going in there and dealing with, like, people are gross and you don't really think about it or pay too much attention to it until you're in the middle of a day and some woman comes in with their 3 kids that are licking the counters as they wander around. It's just like, no part of that is okay. You have a customer, you help them find what they need because they're short on certain supplies. They come up to the counter and you start ringing them out, tell them what their purchase is, and they pull out a wad of ones. It's like, no, you do not lick your fingers and touch. That's gross. I can't even stand doing that myself. It's just like, why? No. And I have a chronic ailment that just, I fear, makes me more likely to have the worst case develop from this if I ever get a bad case of it. And I don't want to be exposed to that on a regular basis. And Saturday was like every other Saturday since the start of the new year. Nobody's staying home. And I'm like, I can't keep walking into this cesspool of stupidity. Something has to give. Either these people figure this crap out fast, or I'm walking for a while. Because I don't want to deal with that. I feel safer volunteering my time with an organization, delivering needed supplies to people in quarantine. I feel safer doing that. So it's just like, yeah, I very much considered the possibility of, like, it might just be the time to say, I'm cutting for a few weeks, maybe even for the rest of the year. Just say, I'm done. I'm going to go work on my projects. There's a part of me that really wants to do that. I'm just the fact that I know we provide service and goods to people who need them right now makes it harder for me to walk away. Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to see what I can do with some of that. And I kind of want to devote a little bit of my time towards doing some of my stuff again, because now more than ever, people are looking for things to watch on YouTube. And I think if I'm reviewing digital books that you could download, if I'm reviewing movies you can watch on Netflix, Amazon Prime, or YouTube, then I should do that. because it's something I can use to develop this channel a little bit more and connect with more people. Because I would ultimately really enjoy the opportunity to network with other YouTubers and have something to share and offer with them. And as much as I'm enjoying the projects I'm working, I've not put a lot of effort into growing the channel or developing the channel much further. So I got to figure out how I'm going forward with that. And now seems to be the time. It's definitely something that's going to be on the menu in the near future. Now, I don't imagine I'm going to make a lot of money right now. Most people don't have the money for merchandise or purchasing a game or a book that I write, and ad revenue for YouTubers is just tanking right now because businesses are closing and they're not going to pay for advertising on YouTube right now. But I'm not as worried about that as I am about generating a community of people who want to play together and work together. So I do want to see if I can develop that a little bit more. So one of the things I was thinking of, there's a site called Roll20 that builds a virtual desktop that you can do some customized game pieces for. And so I may see if I can just build some simple illustrations of some of the games that I made this year so that they can be playable online. I don't know if I know anybody who wants to be a player for any of my games online. I guess I'll have to find out. I was trying to reach out to local YouTubers through Facebook a little while ago, and we had like a week of communication and then everybody just disappeared. So that's not working particularly great, but I may do some reach out to some other YouTubers and see what I can do for gameplay with other people. Yeah, I mean, I would feel guilty walking away permanently from my job because it's there right now, and we fulfill a need that people currently have, and we benefit people who are currently struggling through loss of job and isolation. We afford the opportunity for them to get the things they need and to interact with other people, and I don't want to turn my back on that. I don't know. It's a lot of something I got to think a lot about. But so I was thinking I might do. I might be able to pull up the images I used for cards to make my first ever playable card game. I had printed from a printing company, and I play tested it with a lot of people, and I got some pretty good reviews from people who were playtesting. So I might be able to build that deck of cards again in Roll20 to make them online playable. I don't know if it's possible to make a purchasable online playable through Roll20. I don't think it is. I don't think they do that, but I may look at that. I've been thinking, like, if I have some downtime, I may build a work surface with a downward pointing camera for the Roving Jack channel for some simple projects. But I could also use that for some of the things I would do on this channel. So like, as I play more with my world building and stuff like that, like I've thought about like doing some of my maps from my cartography that I participated in years and years and years ago. I just saw your comment there from weeks ago, I feel like, and I didn't notice it before. I don't think I'm getting notifications from YouTube when people comment on a video, so I have to be more conscious of popping back and checking it out. But I replied to it, and basically I've I've been into making maps since I was little, and the first time I became absolutely fascinated with it, like every kid does that little piece of paper with a crayon drawing of like the dotted line with the X on it to mark where in the yard they buried some stupid little a coffee can full of treasure or something like that. Not every kid does that, but it's a typical kid thing. It's not a thing that I would equate to um, kind of an investment in it. It's sort of like I remember watching Voltron as a kid and loving that show and never wanting to miss an episode. But I wouldn't call that my first exposure to anime. My first exposure to real Japanese animation, the first thing I can really recall being that for me was um, Warriors of the Wind. Later renamed, its original title, I believe, was Nausicaa and the Valley of the Winds. It was Hayao Miyazaki's sort of future, the world in destruction kind of story. And I remember watching that movie at an aunt's house when my mother was away for a while. And our father died, I think, before that. And so I was visiting at an aunt's house, spending a couple nights there while my mom was doing something, I think for her. She may have had, it may have been the cancer at that time. It may have been something for her master's program too. I can't remember which it was. But regardless, she was away. I was at my aunt's house, and we had rented a movie from a movie store, a VHS. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they had DVDs at the time. And it was a movie store like Blockbuster. And it was this weird, it was an animated movie. So they were like, yeah, sure. And it was one of the most powerfully interesting stories I had ever seen in an animated film. And I spent the rest of the night just kind of in a daze, like, wow, that's like, oh, wow. And it was like, it just left me with that feeling in my head all night long. Like I had been exposed to something deep and profound. And by the same token, I feel like I can say the same thing about map making, where like I made maps. I'm sure I made maps as a little kid where, where in my room did I hide the thing under the bed or something? And so you put an X mark under the bed and you do a dotted line to the door of the room, and that's your map of the treasure. And I was like, I'm sure I did something stupid like that at some point. But I remember a project for I want to say it was third grade, where we were supposed to have sort of an art project to make a map like the map of like the map used for ships to travel to the New World. After we discovered the New World, you had map makers like Amerigo Vespucci, which is where we get the name of America, I believe, if that's not a myth. Was the Amerigo mapping the most commonly used map for navigating to the New World? Was a map by Amerigo Vespucci, and so it was the America map. And so we were supposed to do make our map of something or other. I can't even remember the whole assignment or something like that. And I remember getting a very nice piece of drawing paper, not like a construction paper or something stupid like that, but a very nice kind of, not quite parchment, but close enough to parchment look. And I remember drawing my map on it, doing a border, doing the key on the map. And then my dad had taught me a little bit of a trick for aging it. I think what we dipped it in something. I want to say it was tea, but more than likely it was beer. But it yellowed the page. And then from there, you let it dry. You folded it when it was wet so that the creases had darkening on it. So it looked like it had aged a certain way. I think we even popped it in the oven a little bit to dry it faster. And that yellows it a little bit more. And then when he took it out, he was a smoker. And so he used a cigarette or a lighter and he scorched the edges of it so it looked like a treasure map that had been in a ship fire or something like that. And so we were supposed to have this thing to show off, and I was like, it was the coolest map I had ever seen. It had a little hole in the, it wasn't like a perfect square. It had the edges were ripped and there were creases in the map, and the edges were sort of like edged and then like burned into the edge and the ash rubbed off. So it looked like it had lived a life. And then right in a little ways from the edge is a hole through the middle of it, burned with a cigarette, I think. And, it was the most, when I brought that in for a project, other people had like crayon on construction paper maps, and mine looked like amazing. I'm sure if we found it today, it would look very cheesy. But to the little me's brain back then, it was the most realistic, amazing treasure map ever. And I loved it. And I sort of fell in love with the idea of like, now I know tricks to make these things look so awesome. And I sort of had fun with that. And I kind of got into the idea of doing wind roses on my maps and certain other little techniques I did over time. And then I think it was a little bit, I would occasionally just make a few maps during high school. And then after high school, I sat down at one point and just really began to play with making maps. And I hatched on techniques that made some really nice looking maps. And I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years after I graduated high school. I joined an online membership for a group of online map makers guild, cartographers guild. And every month there was a contest that it was just like amongst a group of us, there was a contest to see who can make the neatest looking map. And I did several of those contests. I don't think I ever won one, but I always thought it was fun because they would propose what the map was supposed to be about, and you would try to make one. And I always said like, oh, what's the neatest twist I could do on this? So I'm trying to remember. I think they had one that was like doorways or something like that was the prompt. And I made a map where you had a world with a doorway into hell and a doorway, I think I even had a doorway into heaven. And it was this one like Stonehenge style doorway on the map. And I built it so that the map would be, the base map would be the land. And then you would have those transparent overlays. Do you remember those little gimmicks you had as a kid where you had like this little, it looked like blue and red static on a TV screen, and you slide them into a red film, and the red film blocks out all the red but makes all the blue purple, and it would spell out one word. And if you pull it out and you slide it under the other color, it would say something else. So that's sort of the idea I was using for my map for that. And it was like you had 3 worlds stacked on top of each other that shared this one doorway in the middle. And that was my map for that month for doorways. And so like I was always doing these weird, interesting little puzzles of how can you make a map unlike anybody has seen for this kind of thing before. Okay, wow. Okay, I just got a bunch of messages all in a row. Scratch. Okay, so yeah, I've played with Scratch. Scratch is a little, it has some possibilities, but I think it also has some limits. I have thought about potentially playing around with trying. There's a book on how to make a game using Python, and I did a little Python programming before. Not enough to say that I can actually program in Python, but enough to know that I've checked it out, and I could probably learn it a little bit better. Okay, uh, campaign cartographer and a big book that details how to use it. It's a program. Okay, so I'll take a look and see what I can find right here. Campaign curve. Cartographer. Sure, I spelled that entirely wrong, but okay, what do we got? Campaign Cartographer 3. RPG map, RPG and fantasy map maker. Yeah, I think that's it right there. Yeah. I can check it out. How? What kind of software is it? Is it for Windows, or is it old enough that I may have to build a emulator just to play it? I've got a couple games I want to pull up too, but right now I can't seem to order anything from Amazon because they're really backed up with trying to fulfill other things. Okay, so yeah, I was looking to see if I could pull up some of my old favorite role-playing games that you could play on computers and Nintendo, but I can't get a few of the pieces I would need to make that happen because it's all blocked right now. Okay, so I could check it out. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'd have to get down to the post office to pick it up, so it might be a bit of a trick, but we'll get that figured out. I think we could probably get that working out and see what I can do with it. But yeah, I mean, for me, there's always been a pleasure in doing physical, like with hand-based materials. When I did maps in after high school, I had this little trick I would use to take a piece of paper, rip it into individual little chunks of rough edged pieces, and then you lay those out on a bigger piece of paper, and you take a little bit of watercolor and you run it along the edge of it, and then you lift those pieces up, and now you've got a coast, and then you blend out from the coast to make the coloring of the shading of the coastal waters, and I really enjoyed that. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. And honestly, I would wager there are enough people out there who would have a fun time with a camera down perspective of me just making maps. I'm sure there are people out there who are map geek like I am, would love to see some of that. But I could also use it for creating images of characters, and then maybe talking about the backstory as I illustrate a character, or something like that, where here's a character, write a story about this character, and maybe you put this character in a science fiction setting where I wrote it as a character for one of my fantasy stories. It'd be fun to see what people make of that kind of person or character. And I could do some, like, the other thing I've always been kind of fond of. One of my favorite Nintendo games when I was younger was the Dragon Warrior, the Dragon Quest games. And wouldn't you know it, Dragon Quest has all of the things I love in it. Wipe down, yeah. But I think the last time we tried to do that, we did it through organized it through my Facebook page, which I haven't checked in like 3 months. But we could do that. Yeah, we could probably see what we can do there. And but the Dragon Quest games have they map cities. They create characters that you interact with that have story elements they deliver to you. They have overland maps that are like continental maps and whatnot. And the other thing, they have monsters that you can interact with. So designing monsters would be a fun thing I could do on my tabletop too. And then the other thing that I loved, and I to this day, I don't think I've ever found anybody who did it as well as Dragon Quest did. But the Dragon Quest games have this tendency to introduce you to these very mythical items. The Orichalcum sword, or the what was the demon tooth hammer or something like that. And it's always like this nice, interesting illustration of this item, and then next to it is the information about its its power and its capabilities, and it's just this little chart. You have this whole chart of all these things. I always loved that. I love that so much. And there's a part of me that would have a lot of fun just making little entries to put into charts. So like, and if other people want to use them for other things, go for it. But like the idea of sitting down and just building monsters, maps, treasures, and magic items, like the thing I liked about the Dragon Quest, it was you had armor, you had weapons, you had tools. So it would be like the key, the thief's key that opens any lock of a certain type. And then you have like the magic key that opens certain locks that are protected against things like the thieves' key. And then you had like another key, and you had like the sun orb that, when combined with the rain pendant, made a rainbow bridge and allowed you to cross to another piece of territory. Like, I love that. Like, it's not like some of those modern role-playing games, sort of, where you're like, you beat a monster and it drops a sword, and that sword is the next level up of power. There is some of that, but overall, like, it felt like the items were part of the world. They had a story to them. And I loved that part of it, and creating those little story piece items. I'd love to do that. And most of the way I'd probably end up doing that, like I might do some simple digital artwork or something like that, but I would probably do hand-drawn pieces. And occasionally, just because I'm that much of a dork about it, going back to that making the map and scorching the edges, I might make some props. Like, I can totally see taking some scrap garbage styrofoam from a package of some kind and cutting it into a blade shape, coating it with some different things to make sure it doesn't dissolve, spray painting it black, and then doing some dry brushing to get different colors and tones on them to make a prop item. Like, I could have so much fun. And like, that's what I do for this channel. I'm here to have fun and share the fun of creative projects with people. And so, like, I mean, yeah, maybe it's not the audience draw that other people may be looking for right now. I'm okay with that. If I'm having fun and there are 5 other people out there who's like, oh, dude, that's awesome, I love it, cool, I'm good with that. I don't need a million subscribers. I don't, honestly, I'd probably panic if I had a million subscribers. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to handle that. That's not what I was looking for. But so that's sort of what I want to try to do here is I want to see if I can. I feel like you talk about Scratch, and I don't know if Scratch has enough versatility that I could put in some of my card games. Like the game I created, one of the card games I did this past year was the Captain Rita Raygun's Thrilling Interplanetary Adventures. That's a storytelling card game. I could build that deck so we could play test it online. But I don't know that I could build it in such a way that I could sell the digital game. I could get the images that I end up making, and I want to redo the art for some of the other games that I've already made. But I could put those and get a company to produce the dice and the cards for my games, sort of like a print on demand. And you could order those and play them with friends and family. That's one thing. The digital version, I don't know if there's an easy way to make a downloadable game to play that with other people for. I'll have to look into Roll20 to see what kind of options they may offer for that. But I could see having a whole lot of fun. And I think some of that will be facilitated by having that top-down view of a work surface. Now, if I do that, I may set it up so that this camera points down and can see everything. And I might do a small inset view for my face if I need to for the rest of it, using my webcam on my laptop, because it doesn't need to be high definition image. And I should be able to record that relatively well. I don't know. I haven't used the webcam on the laptop very much. Its resolution is garbage. I've used it once when I first got this laptop, and the resolution for this webcam, I believe, was like 480 at best. So it's probably not a particularly great webcam shot, but as an inset image, just to see my face as I talk, I think that would work. And I could do that for the creative projects, the characters, the props, the maps, the monsters and magic items that I draw. I've also done one of my sort of calming things that I do from time to time is hand-drawn mazes. I have a couple different styles I do that with. And so it might be fun just to do some of that. And that makes me think that it's also possible that I could just do some of my artworks and just set it up and just sort of have a rambling conversation while I doodle or make some other artwork of some kind. So, I mean, those are some of the things that are on my mind to do right now. And honestly, like, if I found myself in a quarantine, I wouldn't be hurt. I mean, I would thrive probably. Like, as long as I've got a supply of food that'll last me, set me down with a table, some art supplies, some graph paper, some sketching paper, a laptop, an internet connection, access to other things to play with. You might not see me outside of the building for weeks, and I would be having a grand old time the whole time. So, yeah, I get that that's not how it works for everybody else. And so I realize that, like, some people want some social interaction. I don't know that I'm the best person to be the social interaction, but yeah. All right. So that was a bit of a wild ramble here today, but I'm glad to see you're doing okay. I think we're edging up on a full close down. They sort of said restaurants and non-essential businesses are asked to close their doors, and restaurants are sort of at that, you can order takeout and delivery, but no in-house seating. And then I think they've been talking about potentially closing some of the parks, but people are still out and about, and it's like they closed the mall, both malls in the nearby area, and I think just in general, the people who would otherwise go to the mall are just going to the Walmart, and they're wandering around. Now, a couple of the big warehouses have started to sort of have like bouncers at the door saying like no more than 25 people in at a time. And so when you have like a Walmart warehouse and it's like only 25 people allowed, 25 customers allowed at a time, it does sort of feel more empty, but people are still going places. They're still not going to ground. But I have heard more and more people got let go from their jobs, and schools have been closed, potentially for the rest of the year. And so what we're looking at in that particular case is you have a lot of parents now who just don't want to be cooped in the house with their kids all day, going out with their kids to go to a store and wander around, because you can't go to the mall and you can't go to the parks. And so like we're seeing a bit of that, and I feel like we're on the edge of it going to the next level where it's just like, sorry, no, we're going to have at least police, possibly National Guard, sitting at the ends of major roadways. Just, sorry, get off the roads, please. Go back home. Are you going to get groceries when you need them? Okay. But, this is not a vacation time. And so I do know that a lot of people are just unable to deal with being cooped up in the house. I've already seen a few parents go through my line at work, at one of the registers that I work at. I've seen a parent with 2 kids and a grandmother go through on a couple occasions. So you got 3 generations of a family together, and they are full on done with each other for that day. They just, nope, we're not talking about this. This is done. We're going. Just stop touching it. If this was not part of the agreement, go take it back to where you found it. I'm paying for this stuff here, not that. Take it back. And it's like, you can just see that they are done with each other. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a horrible, horrible mess for a lot of people. And I was like, I can kind of understand that. If I were stuck with my mom, I love my mom. I kind of love my sister. But even I would go stir crazy after a week stuck in the same building with them and not able to go anywhere. I think I totally get that. That's sort of why I kind of like not having housemates. Well, honestly, I had housemates for a while, and if they're the right kind of housemates, you can do pretty good by that. But, no, this is going to drive a lot of people bonkers. Yeah, I mean, child abuse and domestic violence are all problems that are probably going to be exacerbated, along with exposing kids more to unfit homes. You have, parents who are drug addicts. They may not be abusive or particularly neglective of their child, but these kids are now in that environment all the time. Their parents aren't going to go clean for this quarantine. The kids are going to be exposed to that a little bit more. You're going to have abuse, neglect of spouses, relationships, pets, all sorts of messed up stuff going on. But that stuff was already going on. This is just exaggerating it. And I look at some of the news that I know, not like news, not like media news, but some of the information that some of us in the communities that track science and technology, you become aware of some of what's out there and what's going on with the development of the progression of this the virus. And not only are we not handling it well right now as a country or even as a world, but we're gonna screw it up. Like there's already talks of like, well, after a few weeks we'll lift. No, a few weeks isn't gonna cut it. I also know that the people who are screaming at each other in their households right now, they don't have rent and they haven't agreed on a way to protect us from that. So we're looking down the barrel of like people, like they may not be able to be evicted right now, but as soon as the conditions that protect them are potentially lifted, they're out. Just at the drop of a hat, we're going to see homelessness spike and spike hard. Yeah, and it's just like it's gonna be a mess. And frankly, like even if we did 2 months of isolation, we are not the only country in the world. I think one of the things I saw recently was like everybody's like, well, China doesn't have any new domestic cases. Wuhan has been, they haven't had a single new case of it develop. And then like a couple days ago, it's like Hong Kong now has 56, 86 new cases. And it's just kind of like, yeah, because it came from people who were outside of the Wuhan area traveling to Hong Kong. We cannot fully and completely isolate enough to, we're not all on the same time scale. Wuhan went first. Italy is one of the worst cases. Spain is looking to pick up the pace after Italy. UK is looking at a hard time, and the US is a mess. And Bolsonaro down in Brazil, he's a week or so behind us, and he looks to be taking this even worse than Trump took it. So, like, we are not going to have the liberty of saying, like, if we locked down for 2 months, 3 months, and mostly eradicated it and just proactively watched for any signs of local outbreaks in communities and shell them up as soon as it happens, we don't have that luxury, because the moment everybody else is free to move around, there's a whole world of other people who have access to spreading this. And it's going to keep recurring in little pockets of restarts and spreading. And because it spreads so wildly, so much more effectively, we're looking at the possibility of this is just going to keep hot spotting for months. And, until we have a vaccine for it that lets us bring it back down to a level that's sort of tamed like the flu, it's gonna be a nightmare. And like we're handling it like, oh, we'll just fix this. No, you won't. No, you won't. And so we're looking down the barrel of a very interesting year and a half. And I don't think anybody understands. Well, I don't think that anybody in the position to make the choices understands what those choices mean. Like, this is going to devastate the economy. We're already seeing an unemployment rate that hasn't been seen. I think they're saying at least since the late 90s, early 2000s. And I wager by 2 or 3 weeks from now, we're going to be looking at an economic situation that has no parallel, at least since, what was it, the late 70s, early 80s, possibly as far back as the 1920s. We're looking at a depression, maybe not as great as the Great Depression, and this won't be the bubonic plague version 2.0, and this won't even be the Spanish flu necessarily, but it's going to be a good second place to the Spanish flu. I don't think we'll have ever had anything that's more than this other than the Spanish flu and the plague. And so it's interesting times. I'm hopeful that all of us do well enough that it's not going to be one of those situations where everybody knows at least 5 people that were killed. I don't want it to ever be that kind of position that we end up in. I don't want to take a look at my next family gathering and realize that we're missing 7 people. Like, I don't want to have that experience. And I hope none of us ever get that experience. But it's going to be some pretty aggressive numbers. And it's going to be at least parallel to the idea of 9/11. Like, we remember 9/11. We remember it in a way that we can go, like, historically, this is a moment. This is an anchor point on the timeline of humanity that we can remember and will be in history books for a long time. And this feels like it's going to be that. Yeah, you be safe. That's the other thing I'm worried about. Most of the people I know a lot of people with chronic disabilities. I know a lot of people who are over the age of 60. And I know some people who are immunocompromised because they're on certain medications for conditions they have. And this has the potential, if we're not very, very careful, to cut an absolute swath through those populations. So please be careful. And yeah, we're almost at an hour now. I think I'm going to call it here tonight. I should be back on tomorrow. I'm trying to think how I'm going to go forward with my scheduling. I think I got to build a plan between now and tomorrow so that I'm not, I don't crash land on my next day off and go like, okay, now I'll start planning. And then it's 3 days later and I'm back to work again. I don't want to do that. So I need to do some planning tonight. So I appreciate the chatting tonight. It was nice to hear that you're okay, and contemplate maybe doing some interesting and fun things rather than just stew in all the bad things going on in the world right now. So with that in mind, thank you for joining me. Take care and have a good night. Okay. I still haven't written this out so that I could just cut and paste. That's not how you spell that. Typing in the dark. Yeah, I thought about getting my power tools out of my storage and building a whole, like, set up, but I don't think I really have that option. All right. Catch you tomorrow, hopefully, if all goes right.